Hi, welcome to the Holographic Human Coach. My name's Sean Nagel,
And I'm Matty Abernathy.
and today um, I'm actually going to be telling my story, my life experience, and I'll be talking about the material that helped me, holographic human transformation theory, um, and some of the ways I applied the information. So, um, I grew up in a small town or small towns in eastern Colorado. Um, my my father, he was yeah, an alcoholic, a drug user, and pretty heavily. He's the trucker biker type. He was a trucker biker type of guy, um, and all my memories of him when I was younger, no matter what he did, um, he was my superhero. So, uh, for example, me at the age of, 7, 8, 9, my dad used drugs. My dad drank alcohol. My dad smoked cigarettes. My dad, was all involved with all sorts of, um, criminal involvement regarding drugs. He was my hero. He couldn't do any wrong. So that was the lifestyle I was to grow up in. That was the belief systems I had. Um, that was just the way of life. That was normal. My mom struggled with mental health, with depression, anxiety. Um, it was quite the emotional roller coaster when I was younger. Um, both of them struggled to stay with each other because of my dad's drug use and my mom. My mom was she was LDS, and she worked really hard at getting her kids and her to church uh, every weekend. Our closest LDS chapel was 45 miles away, so that was a challenge for her. And then with my dad at the time, um, there was no importance into it. There was no real support for her. So it was a quite confusing growing up. Even at this point when my dad was still using. As a kid, I was incredibly bright, and my resilience. I had to have been extremely resilient. Looking back, because of how well I excelled versus the people I had at parents at the time. Um, and I'm not saying that they're bad people. I don't think they were ever bad people. I think that my parents did the best they could with what they knew, and and I think that's going to be the case across the board for most parents. Um, anyways, when I was I was just before I turned 9 years old. My dad was in a drunken rage, and there was a physical altercation between him and my mother, and this led to an ultimatum a couple weeks down the road, where mom approached my dad and said that she's moving to Utah, and he's welcome to come, but only if he stops using alcohol, doing drugs, everything. Like, it all had to stop immediately. So my dad chose his family in a completely indifferent way of life, different culture, different everything. Um, on the 1st of June, it'll actually be my dad's 34th anniversary, clean anniversary. So, the day he loaded all the stuff up into the moving vans was the last day he used. And he's stayed true to that from that day. 100% true to it. No alcohol, no drugs. Now, this experience as a child, Dad was my hero. All these things that he did, Dad was still my hero. I didn't know, there was something deep down inside me that probably, I think that, this probably not right, but it definitely wasn't wrong because it was my dad. When this way of life changed and I didn't have, before when I was in Colorado, there was no curfew for me. There was no, I could go wherever I wanted. I mean, the towns I lived in were like 1,700 people, 1,400 people. And going from that to structure, to mom and dad always being there, that was hard on me. And, I rebelled. I went from interested in life and excited to didn't really care anymore. Didn't care much about anyone anymore. By the time I was 12 years old, my 12th birthday, I shot up methamphetamine and cocaine. Didn't do any drugs again until I was on my 14th birthday, and did it again. And then I didn't use anything except for marijuana here and there until I was 15. But after that, it was pretty much nonstop, unless I was incarcerated. A trauma, there may have been, I know there was a little bit of sexual trauma for me as a child. I know there was a lot of mental abuse and emotional abuse. Physical abuse, I don't know, back then it was pretty acceptable to smack your kid upside the back of the head. So compared to today's, rules and norms, probably plenty of physical abuse. I don't really see it like that. There's a couple of Kirby vacuum cords situations where I considered maybe some physical abuse there, or a shoe thrown upside my head. Probably some physical abuse there. So yeah, I turned to drugs and alcohol fairly early in my life. There was always something I was trying to shut off, something I was trying to hide, something I was running away from, whether that was the thoughts in my head, my emotions regarding anything, whatever it was. I'd landed myself in this program my parents had me be a part of. It was called Tough Love, and it was really just like it sounds, tough love. It wasn't any fun. It was a lot more child abuse than anything, and mentally, emotionally, and they were very pro tough love. All these members of it. There was times I was held down and hit. There was times I was berated, mocked at, laughed at. It was pretty traumatizing, and so my response to it, because it just was not good for me, I didn't like it at all, was to run away from home. First time I ran away from home lasted 24 hours. Cops found me and took me home. The second time I ran away from home was immediately after being brought back. I literally walked in the front door while the cops were talking to my family, and I walked out the back door, and I was gone. This time out, I was gone for about 3 months. And in the 3 months, um, I had, I was using really heavily, and I ended up robbing 7-Eleven, hurting the clerk that worked there in the middle of the night. Um, and a few weeks later, when the law finally caught up with me, I was in DT and spent quite a long time in DT. Um, this is the first time while in DT. I went to a class. I don't know. They just had me go to some class, and part of the assignment in the class was to write a letter of apology to people we've hurt in our life. This is the first time I can remember feeling any emotion or any feeling about what I'd done, about something I'd done. And it, I was a little teenager, narcissistic little shit, really. Um, um, and I got to take a moment to practice some empathy, to really look at who I was at that time, and what things meant to me, what people, what they meant to me. And I got to look at the kind of person that would hurt somebody and make them feel scared. And knowing I was capable of that really scared me. It did. I spent a long time at DT, and then on to observation and assessment from there as a juvenile. And that it's just not a pleasant experience to be observed 24 hours a day. It's like living in a little bubble and just people taking notes on you just all day long. It's pretty crazy. But I ended up going home. And then ultimately ended up relapsing and using meth, getting kicked out of school after school after school. And this went on. I'd got locked up again as a juvenile, taken away from my family, and then went back to my family. But this went on for years, and I, as an adult, went to jail for the first time at 18. I was very much, even before I was an adult, I was very much involved with different gangs and gang members. Never clicked up, though dangerously involved and close with them. It was the way of life that I adopted. I was all right with that code. You don't tell. You just work to gain. Always watching out for myself. Putting, the love and respect and the care to individuals that were only doing the same thing I was doing and hurting them. The truth of the matter is, I was that person that was giving your wives and your kids and your mothers and your fathers dope and sleeping with them. That was who I was. That's what I did. That was the norm for me. There was some periods of time through my adult life where there was some clean time, mostly because I was locked up. There was a 3 years 3-year span where, I put a little time together. There was a 5-year span that I put some time together, but, 2.5 years of that was in prison. I had, in 2003, I lost my little brother to a methamphetamine overdose. His code pretty much adopted mine, and that code killed him. He decided to swallow dope of his friends to keep them from getting in trouble, and these friends decided that it was best not to take him to the hospital in fear they could get in trouble. So it killed him. By 2008, I had gone through all funding that Utah County had to offer me for treatment. It was said in court before sending me to prison that Utah County has exhausted their resources in offering me treatment. And so at that point, I called my grandmother to help me pay for a program, and I did that program, completed it successfully, and the day I left, I drank. 3 days later, I admitted to drinking to my probation officer at the time, and that locked me up for 30 months because of all the charges that were pending in drug court. So I did 30 months, my first time in, only time in prison. And I was able to make a lot of changes. One of the things for me was that second that I got sentenced to prison was pretty surreal, and I knew that I was in a good place, and so I made the promise to myself that I'm going to do everything I can on a day-to-day basis while I'm in there not to come out worse than the way I went in, because all my friends, all the people I hung out with, boy, they came out worse than they went in. All of them. And so that's what I did. I read books. I wrote letters. I got involved in programming wherever I could. And I came out better than I went in. That was in 2008. I went into prison. I was released in 2011. I got out and met my beautiful wife, and things were good for a little while until 2013, and I'd relapsed. So 2013, I went to treatment and was introduced to holographic human transformation theory, and the treatment only lasted 30 days. I wasn't able to afford to stay longer. However, this 30 days, it was enough to prompt me to go to school, go to college. I'd previously gotten my GED in Utah County Jail in 2005, and then while I was in prison, I got my high school diploma. So within 2-3 weeks after I left Matter, I was in college. I fucking hated school as a kid. I can't even tell you, I hated it so much. But I loved it, and I did school. And it was a very, very good thing for me in my life. Education, school, okay? And I was extremely good at it. And I knew I was going to school to become a substance abuse counselor or therapist, or, somebody that was helping out in the substance abuse field, substance abuse and mental health field, and then to own and operate my own program someday. Some things began evolving in my family. You know, my grandfather passed away. Some issues with my mom and dad began to develop. My wife wasn't doing incredibly well with her mental health, and my response sucked. My response was to hyper focus into the one area in life that I'm good at, which unfortunately for me was school. And fortunately, in some ways, I hyper focused in school, and everything collapsed around me. I remember thinking in about March, and the semester ends in May. I remember halfway through the semester, it was about March, and I just got it in my brain. After I said it, after this semester, I'm getting fucked up. And you know, I never took care of that thought. I never, you know, processed through that and shut that down. My response wasn't, you know, back into my wife and the relationship I had with her. I just hyper-focused in school and shut everything else out. So within 2 weeks of me completing my semester and getting my 4.0, I was high. And I'm going to get back to this concept, okay, of hyper-focusing in one area of life, okay? I'm going to get back to it. So remind me.
We're here for you, buddy.
This relapse. I abandoned my wife and my kids for 3 months. The shame was so thick, I couldn't stand to look at my wife because I could see the things I was doing if I did. I kept doing so much substances and introducing new substances into my addiction. Because part of my brain says if you do more, you won't feel it. Part of my brain says if you do more, you don't have to think about it. You'll feel better. My addiction had progressed so much that the more I did, the more I felt, the more I thought. But there was still something in the back of my brain saying, just do more, it'll be okay. Just do more, it'll be okay. And this resulted in quite a few overdoses. The addiction had progressed so much that it enhanced everything I was trying to cover up. And I don't know if you can imagine or if you've ever experienced the feeling of not having a choice. It just like knew it was there, but not capable of it. Everything I did, it was physically, mentally, emotionally, just everything. I had this only one choice to use. And that was pretty incredible for me. That really sucked for me because I knew it. You know, the other part of me said, "You're just going to do it, and you're just going to bawl. You're going to feel the torment." And then to still use. That hurt. That hurt. You know, a couple times I was talking to my wife, and I had done some horrible things out there in that 3 months. Just horrible things. You know, horrible things that directly affect my relationship with my wife. horrible things to other people. It was extremely dangerous every moment I was out there. I had got myself, and I was already pending on, I had a couple of second-degree felonies already pending in the courts on a 402 motion, double-step 402 motion reduction, and I violated them by first picking up possession charge and then getting a DUI charge a few days later, and then picking up a first degree, second degree, a third degree, Class A, Class B, Class C, and then still finding a way to get out and getting picked up again in later July. And this is in the summer of 2016. I thought I was done. I was going to get laid down. I was going to prison for sure. I'd already been there. It wouldn't be that hard for them to send me back. My wife, for some reason, I think it was the day of my little brother's birthday, she bailed me out of jail. I wasn't real sure why. But I came here, and it took a while to get here. It took a while to get back. On my way here, I OD'd between here and Fairview. That was September 17th of 2016. No, it's August 17th, 2016. And I don't have a whole lot of memory regarding admitting that day to Matter Behavioral Health. I don't have a lot of memory there. I have glimpses and pieces, and it was quite the sideshow. If you ever get an opportunity, feel free to ask Janie what was my admit look like. Janie, she'll probably laugh. It was bad. I ended up leaving halfway through my admit. I wasn't having it. I got in my car. My wife was driving, and I remember getting in the car first, and I heard this interesting. And Matty and I talked about it. We have a couple of very similar parts about our experience in life.
The more I'm hearing your story, the more I'm seeing lots of similarities across the board. Keep going.
So I sat down in the car and I go to shut the door, and I heard and felt this voice, this presence. Don't leave. Do not leave town. Amy sits down in the driver's seat, and I looked at her and I said, "You can't leave town. Don't leave." So we went and got a room, and I ended up admitting the next day. And there were some things that night in that hotel room was the first time that I voiced any sort of suicidal ideation. And the closest that I've come to it is I actually said out loud, "I wish it was all over." And that scared me a lot. I knew, though, I was in the right place. I knew I had to stay on this earth, and come to Matter and learn holographic human transformation theory from Jeannie. everything in my being, everything. And you remind you, I'm still just awake from an overdose too. Earlier that morning. A couple of things I got to really think about was, commitment. Why is this time going to be different? It was my 13th treatment. I had been to a month long, I had been to 3 month long, I'd been to 2 month long, I'd been to, outpatient after outpatient, 12-step meeting after 12-step meeting. And it's like, why is this different? Why? What's going to make this different? And the truth of the matter is it was me that got to make it different. It was my level of engagement, my level of belief, my level of surrender, my level of admitting that I had been given the information, the data, throughout my life. All of a sudden I started getting all of these voices and memories of my dad, of church leaders, of my mom, of school teachers, of my older brother, of different, law enforcement officers or COs in the prisons. All these different advices, all these things just started coming back, and I'm like, fuck, I've ignored a lot. Any one of these pieces of advice that people that loved me, people that cared about me, people that seen potential in me, and that was my answer. It didn't come out of their mouth, and fuck you. Not hearing it. And that hurt me. I got to learn. I got to learn in God's time. So that was one of the things I started really processing, was reevaluating all these pieces of advice, all these things my dad said, my mom said, my wife had said, my mother-in-law, all these people in my life, as throughout my entire life. I just began to evaluate it all, and I came to some other. That was one thing that helped significantly, was just starting to reevaluate that, and I'll get back to it in a moment. There was another thing, was I came to the understanding that throughout my life, and going through treatments, I always had to have a secret. I couldn't tell that one thing. I couldn't be vulnerable. I could do everything except for go against my code. And so I decided no more secrets. It's all coming out. Every bit of it. I sat in a room of, at first for me it wasn't very many people. There was like 5 people here as I'm learning holographic human transformation theory. And one of the things that came up in my mind was, what are the odds you're going to see any of these people again? Just let it out. That helped me justify to myself that I can just let it out. And I'm so grateful that every one of those people that were there, like one of them has passed away, but I'm glad I still know. There's something to say about that saying, we're only as sick as our secrets. So that was another thing. Another understanding that I'd come to is my entire life, I was a chameleon. I could be whatever you needed me to be at any moment, whatever I needed me to be, in order to get whatever the fuck I wanted and do whatever I wanted. I could play any role. And that hurt me. I lost myself in it. So my resolve there was, you got to find you, Sean, and begin to be you everywhere you are. The same you. So my resolve to it was, okay, if you're in the meditation room, which is now like a study room, I guess, right? Or where you do court or whatever, right? Whether I was in the meditation room, or I was in the group room, or I was in Dion's office, or Janie's office, or on the phone with my wife, or at home with my wife, or wherever I was the same person, saying the same things, acting the same way. And it takes work. It does. Like, it definitely takes work. And so I began doing that. The second I walked through that threshold and coming in to Matter, I knew it was all possible. I knew it was all possible. This integrity thing was so key, so very key for me. The advice thing, that part was so important to me. With the advice part, one of the things I did after evaluating it was, okay, I think if I followed maybe one of these pieces of infinite piece of advice, that it'd help. And my response to even that thought was, fuck you. It was. Still. Though I did it. I decided, I'm like, it was a process too, because it was contemplating, and then, because that means somebody's right and I was wrong. Fuck them. And so I started with some advice from my dad. And what do you know, it worked out. Though I kept going. Used some advice from my wife. It worked out. And so on and so on. It was getting to the point of following advice that I've heard from people that I couldn't stand. And it'd work. And guess what? But I kept going anyways. Because I was finding relief. I was beginning to know myself more. And I was beginning to be able to heal myself. The techniques. Now, mind you, okay, I've got 2 cases in, at this point, I've got 2 cases in district court that are second-degree felonies with a promise already of prison if I'd violated, which I violated. And then 3 new open cases. 1 with first-degree felony, a second, a third, I think, at the time originally. So I started learning holographic human transformation theory. And there was some of the stuff, I've got a bit of an audience today, which is good. I prefer it this way. I just might raise a hand. Is there anybody in your 30 days here? Anybody in 60 days? Okay.
Got 2.
Okay. Anybody in 90? Okay. Anybody past 90? Okay. At first, there were some things from my education and things I'd learned previously in my life. There were some parts and pieces to holographic human transformation theory that made some sense, and then there was some other stuff that was just what? No, I don't do that. That's not something I could do. Nope. And that was just my initial response. Still, I got to remember, 13th treatment. I don't have the answers. Everything I've done doesn't work. It hasn't. So that's just absurd for me to continue, practicing my will and based off what my understanding of things were and continuing doing the same thing and expecting a different result. That's absurd. So, the amount of pain versus just believing. Giving up. Completely giving up and just believing wholeheartedly. And maybe there's an answer behind all that. Maybe. Well, the gamble, it's a no-brainer. I'd finally come to the understanding that what do I have to lose? Shit, I've already experienced, suicidal thoughts. I've hurt everybody in my life. I've tried to kill myself and using drugs. My thinking was so narrow. I've hurt everybody, including myself. What do I have to lose? But I just decided with all those other things, I'm gonna believe. Because it might heal me. I might be able to smile. I might be able to stop crying. With my first 3 days here, I couldn't take notes like you guys can, like this. It wasn't possible for me. I'd have ruined the paper, every single one of them. Every group, for 30 to 45 days, learning holographic human transformation theory, learning more about me, learning ways to heal myself. I had a puddle of tears just below my face. I pretty much cried myself to sleep, and I woke up to myself crying on a daily basis. And I'm going to get more into detail with the technique, some of the technique stuff here in just a few moments, but along with deciding to believe, because it's a decision, it's a choice. It's a cup. No, it's a coffee mug. Okay, I believe it's a coffee mug. I believe it. It's just a choice to believe. And then engage and seek for application in the material, in my ways of coming to understand who I am, in opportunities of healing myself. I just chose to believe all in. And so I did. And things just began to change. One of my biggest pieces of advice I still give to this day is, when you're here, change your mindset to I only have 90 days to fix me, to understand me. That's all I have. It's 90 days. Instead of I have 90 days left or 45 days left. I only got this much time. It took me 40 plus years to fuck me up. And to think that I'm gonna have it all figured out after 90 days, that's kind of crazy. Those programs are so strong, and we don't change programs. We can create new programs and begin to run those programs more. Okay? That takes practice. We depend on those old programs because when something hurts, when we don't like something, when we don't have an answer, when our wives yell at us, or things just don't go our way. Those old programs are they're certainly handy, and we know them, you know. So running new programs, creating and running new programs, so key. And in learning anything, especially about self, at first, grab your shovel. If you're still here in your 90 days, then you got time, damn it. Grab your fucking shovel and start digging. Get it out. Get all of it out. All the secrets, all the lies, all the garbage. Get it out. This is your time. This is it. Right now. Dig until there's just nothing. Until there's nothing left to dig out, and you get to rebuild. You get to create those new programs. You get to run those new programs. I was talking about integrity, right?
Yes, you were talking about integrity. I wanted to ask a question about the hyper-focused.
Okay.
About being hyper-focused. So what I noticed is, in your life that you're sharing with us today is prior to entering here into matter and learning the holographic human transformation theory, your efforts to focus on school and a very formal structure of learning seem to have excluded everything else in your life.
Yeah.
And have been detrimental. What I'm noticing here, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's just an observation, but now that you're learning about yourself through the instruction and education of holographic human transformation theory, this focus, or this hyper-focus, which once may have debilitated you or excluded everything, is now bringing, channeling in this way is bringing things into perspective, and it's actually a manageable thing, and actually an asset or a strength that you're learning to develop here as you're entering into this. Is that, would I be correct in assuming that? Or?
So, time is necessary in change, right? Okay, it's a part of changing. In learning holographic human transformation theory and applying it in our lives is, we're working towards oneness, wholeness, right? Okay? And what does that mean? Well, to me, it means being all of me. And there's a balance, right? And there's correspondence between all things. There's me living my purpose, and it consisting of wholeness, of oneness. Every part of my life now revolves around within my purpose. Everything is motorized, like powered by my purpose. And I don't do things in my life unless it supports my purpose. And why do you ask that? Well, it makes my life simpler. Not that life is simple or easy in any way. It just makes it simpler. So there's a part in entropy and neg-entropy, right? It talks about purpose, and it talks about, the book is about success. And being successful through life's challenges. So what happens anymore when I experience anomalies, deviating anomalies, is I acknowledge it's existing, it's happened, it's there, and I take it back to my purpose. And as long as my purpose is greater, I can move forward. Right? I'm going to integrate the anomaly into my life and let my purpose power me through. It rules. And I did linguistically say that correctly, so it rules there. I think in the book, the way it's worded is take it back to purpose and times by 10. I think that's the way it's worded. And so consider for yourselves what this means to you. What does it look like? I just explained what it looked like to me and the way it applies in my life. And I've endured, while I was here in 2016, a very close family friend passed away. And I'd already told you about my little brother. I didn't do well. I didn't do well at all with death through my life. Okay? Because of my beliefs, partly because of my beliefs having to do with life and then death. Okay? Coming to understand purpose it was key for me. And I think that when other people put some time into it and begin to be their purpose, you will find extraordinary value in it. Because it's what gets me through my life. I only have a close family friend pass away. I've also had, since then, my older brother pass away. So both of my brothers are gone. Okay. I've had a close friend recently pass away. And then another close friend really recently passed away. I've had huge challenges with my relationship with my wife, our marriage, through this, since getting clean and learning holographic human transformation theory. And ultimately, it was the things I learned, some of the concepts in holographic human transformation theory that not only helped me through, but helped both of us repair our marriage and continue working on our marriage. Now, I'm not perfect. I still have frailties, sympathies, I still have limiting beliefs and doubts. Still do. Nothing like I used to, though. When you get back to the integrity portion, after about a month of me being here and learning the material, I had come to the understanding that one of the reasons why I had continued going back to using drugs or my closed systems becoming so powerful that I just couldn't function was due to a lack of application. Oh, I wasn't even finished responding to your question.
It's all good.
So I'll get back to it. I'm going to go back to that and I'll be right back. Okay. The hyper-focus. For this time, because of our closed systems and what's going on in our lives, now is the time to keep this the importance. Learning and healing for whatever amount of time. Some of us have agencies watching over us and making sure we're on the right track, doing what we're supposed to be doing. And for the time in which learning this material is required. I promise you. You focus on it. You focus on learning and healing. And if you get the opportunity to learn of others and work towards healing them, whether it's by service or whatever it is, everything else in your life will grow. Okay? And I'm telling you this because it's my experience myself and because it's what I've observed over the past 4 years. You focus on you through those required times, whoever it is that has those restrictions or requirements for you, okay? Your treatment recommendations or your APMP officer or whoever it is, okay? You focus on learning and take care of you, everything else will grow, okay? Everything will grow exponentially. The second you focus, your focus becomes something else, it's all going to crumble. It will fall apart. And then you're going to be sitting somewhere thinking to yourself, fuck, I shouldn't have flipped him off when he said that. I should have listened. I don't know why. It's bizarre. It's so bizarre. It's like
So some of our weaknesses can absolutely become our greatest strengths, and yet because of perhaps our conscious unawareness of how old programs work in us, inadvertently we may be able to, or it happens. It happens to us a lot. It certainly happens to me a lot. Old programs will sink back in or will creep back in, and I'm not aware of what those things are. And that takes a lot of to notice that and to be actually very honest with myself. It takes a lot of practice. It takes awareness. It takes discipline, and there is autonomy in the discipline in all things, especially the things that Sean is sharing with you guys today. And also, it takes a lot of integrity.
Well, it's interesting you bring this up and get me back on track, so I appreciate you. You're doing your job well. Integrity, oh my. So I started going on these home visits because of a lack of application. So I went home once a week for 3 days. I'd come back. And when I was here, I was here. When I was home, I was home. But I had this proposal to write up, and I had this plan and purpose and detailed out written. I still have them all. I still have the papers today. Of what I was doing when I went home, what my purpose was, what my plan was, the objective, and I was faced with many challenges when being able to do this. And one of the things that I realized in my proposal was I first started with the pros and cons list of following through with this idea or not, And one thing that I noticed, and it still rings true today, is my number one thing up on the cons list, even today, possible relapse. And it stays there for a reason. Because that's possible. Those old programs they're strong. They're loud, Possible relapse, it's up there still. So I've got this plan, and it's written out in detail. I was to bring it home, I discuss it with my wife, and to work on a marriage that she really didn't have a whole lot of interest in working on at the time. When she brought me here to drop me off. For good. She was gone. But the persistent little bugger I am, I went home, and my wife at the time, she was struggling with remaining abstinent. And so I got home, and because of my old programs, I don't know how to deal with a loved one that's using. So my old programs, how do I respond? Well, exactly like tough love. Exactly like tough love taught me. Verbally abusive. Mentally, emotionally. My response was to rip into her, yell at her, tear her apart, get to the bottom of it, who, why, what, everything. And one of the things I noticed was that each and every one of these altercations, my response to the data in my environment was I didn't feel good walking away from it, and my perception was that she didn't feel good either. It was very horrific and nasty feeling, especially when I'm going home to help do my part in fixing the marriage, in fixing me within the marriage, and hopefully inspiring her to jump on board to fix the marriage. And I was going home and treating her like shit. When I would come back to the facility, when I'd come back to Matter, one of my things that I did was that I would write a report, and then there would be a group, and I'd get to talk about my successes or failures from going home, right? Well, I wanted to lie. I did not want to come back here and tell anybody that my wife was using. Because I wanted to protect her. I wanted to protect me and me being able to go home. But I told them I was using. I couldn't go back home. That's what my thinking was. And so I wanted to lie. I wanted to just lie. And I probably even colluded with Amy as she was driving me back here to lie and not tell about what's been going on. I made it. I came back and I was committed to just lying about it, not talking about it, not admitting that was going on. And I made it about 2 hours, and I was in the middle of the technique, the triangle communication.
You never know.
The triangle communication, wow. What an experience to be experiencing and doing this technique, right? Doing the paperwork and really digging in. I made it 2 hours. I stood up, I threw a fit, went into Brendan's office, and Brendan was a staff member when I was here before. And I told him I can't lie anymore. Let's have group. And that's when I knew I could have integrity. And guess what? I went home the next weekend. And I can't say it got better the way I treated my wife, not immediately. We had a situation here that a client had used, right? And Janie had found out, and Janie, she does an extremely good job of living the material she teaches, the holographic human transformation theory, and applying it in the ways in which she communicates and helps others, right? So here we are in this group setting, and talking to these individuals that had used and violated the rules and put other people in danger, risking other people's sobriety. And I heard this group was going on, and I was like, yeah, let's get them. Just, get them out of here. That was my thinking. Still very closed. And I watched Janie just be so open and I felt compelled to model her behavior in the way I was, my challenges at home when I go home on these home visits, and I failed. I had this model, I had this idea and way to go about it, and it was like I get sucked into this whirlwind. That's the way it felt, you know, and it was downhill from there. We get into the let's get into the concept of worldview, self-view. One of these weekends, my wife had come pick me up, and she had allowed others to help her, other people help her use the drugs, and it resulted in a very nasty infection. We went to the hospital. They drained it out of her arm, and then we went home, and we went back to the hospital the next day because it got worse, and they ended up admitting her into the ICU for blood poisoning. She almost lost her arm, and still on a fucking ICU bed, I still was ripping into her. Doing a horrible job of what my purpose was of going on the home visits, my plan. I just a horrible job. She was transferred to hospitals, and I got to watch a doctor do what I was doing to her, and I lost it. And I flipped out. And I did get a long minute to think about it at the hospital afterwards. Wow, this is exactly what I've been doing. So the pain became greater, and I was able to change the behavior. I could be more of my role in the relationship with my wife as a caregiver and a protector versus a violator, abusive mentally and emotionally. And I was able to do this by learning the things I had with holographic human transformation theory, worldview, self-view, learning the difference of being subjective, objective, learning more about my firing order as a functionist, learning some of the characteristics, natural abilities, areas in which functionists struggle, coming to understand more about opposites, okay? Which is really significant because my opposite's actually a strategist. So that means my potential is strategist. So now I've got a ton of data, a ton of information that I can work with and come to know myself more and more and more and create changes in my life, create success, create me, this being that is loving and caring and compassionate and understanding and forgiving. And one of the most significant timeline. There's two. I'll give you two examples. One of my I think it was my first past timeline. Oh my
These
gosh.
techniques are amazing. These two.
This guided imagery, this technique, past time, this gives an individual the opportunity to revisit an experience or an event in the past as who I was at the time of doing the technique, right? It's not about going back and reliving and experiencing getting re-traumatized. It's not about that. It's about going back with the life lessons I've learned, the understanding I have now, and going back and observing and pulling out all the positive things, the learnings, gaining different perspective. And then bringing that all back up to the present, right? So I did this, and I was an animal. And when I was learning this material initially, I was an animal. They said one shovel is going to be good enough. I grabbed 3, and I was digging nonstop from the second I woke up to the time I went to bed, every day. And I can say that and be proud of that because I've never done that in my life with anything. And it was day in, day out, every single day programming, even if I was at home, even if I was screwing up at home. It was day in and day out. Anyways, I decided to do my first one on feelings of abandonment. And so in the process of doing this technique, this guided imagery, the past timeline, I went back on my timeline, and I continued to go back on my timeline until the first time I could remember experiencing the feelings of abandonment. And I came to an event, experience, where my dad drove truck at the time, and where my dad was taking me on the truck, and he did cross country long haul, and so I wake up in the morning very early, 4-ish or so, and my mom's not letting my dad take me. I was crushed. Like I'd been planning to I think I was 4, maybe 5. I was just crushed. I could see this event. So like I was bawling, my little brother woke up, and we're in our little jumpers, and I'm in a red one, he's in a blue one, and just both of us are just bawling now. And my dad, he says, I can't take you, mom's not letting me, and I was crushed. And I remember standing there on the porch with my little brother holding his hand, and my dad's driving away in semi. That was the first time I can remember feeling abandonment. A very significant memory was triggered moments after doing the guided imagery, within 5 minutes. The memory came back. This is the same long haul trip that on my dad's way back, he turned his semi he turned it over and rolled it into the Colorado River, completely crushing the cab. It had killed me. So now, do I choose to feel abandoned, or do I have an opportunity to choose to have great admiration and respect for my mom for following her intuition? Well, it's still a choice, right? Somebody that wants to heal, I chose to choose the latter. Because that is an absolute, it is a reality. It's something that anybody could have looked at and said, but they saved your life. Why wouldn't I choose that? Do I want the pain, or do I want to heal? Because they're both truths. I did feel abandoned. Granted, by choosing to say, you know what, no, they saved my life. Where do I get off feeling abandoned for them saving my life? Right? So this technique regarding abandonment, in which, remind you, abandoned people. I just got done abandoning my wife and kids for like 3 months. So this was a very big thing for me to work on. one of the things that's come from even doing this one guided imagery, this one technique, is all those experiences in between the present then and the past. The first time I remember feeling abandoned was almost like wiped away, discredited of abandonment, and new perspective in place of. Incredible, life-changing for me.